Hello, and welcome back to another Tracker video, where today I am going to do tunnel maintenance on the monorail. So, I've been procrastinating this for months now. The tunnels have a lot of problems. There's a few tunnels that are just completely unfinished, and several tunnels also have been broken by a mod that I have removed. So the mod that I had, I used some of the statics from it to build the surround around the tunnel portal. And the surround around the tunnel portal doesn't just serve as an aesthetic purpose. It's also a functional thing that covers up the gaps around the tunnel. As you can see there briefly, there's some gaps around the actual tunnel itself. So I use that to cover up the tunnel. As you can see, we have just finished the first tunnel, and we are now going on, well, we've finished one portal of this tunnel, and now we're going to the other portal of this tunnel. Once again, same thing, we're going to be putting on a new surround. You can see the gaps a bit better, so you can see I place a bigger one at the top, a terrain integrator at 0.03 scale, and then the rest of them are 0.02 scale. Each terrain integrator is put at 18 degrees relative to the last one. You can see I'm not doing that there right now because I haven't quite figured that out. But once I realised how many I was using on the edges, I then realised that if I do 18 degrees per terrain integrator, it creates a perfect curve down to the ground. So you can see I'm adjusting them there to make sure the curve is perfect. And you can see I've completed that side. Now to mirror it, I just take the angle and I click on pitch and then I press minus on the keyboard, because that actually inverts the pitch, and that essentially mirrors the angle, so I can move it to the other side. Anyway, we're going on to the next tunnel, which is just a couple of kilometers down. I overshot a little bit and went into the tunnel slightly, which is not recommended when building the tunnels, because I've had... well, you can go in the tunnel, but not where you are building the tunnel, because I've had several incidents that resulted in explosions. So you can see here, now I've refined my building process. I'm building it a lot quicker now. You can see that tunnel, I must have had trouble doing the map decals to open up a hole into the terrain, because you can see there's bits of terrain inside the tunnel. Anyway, through we go to the other tunnel portal. This one's a very long and straight tunnel. Most tunnels you can't see the other side through because of the curvature of curbing, but because that tunnel is on a constant incline as it's going up to some mountains, it's actually flat all the way through, so you can see the portal on the other side. So you can see I'm doing the exact same thing, placing terrain integrators and adjusting them. Once again, mirroring it on the other side by pressing minus on the keyboard for each one. Now, pressing minus doesn't automatically mirror anything with Kerbal Constructs. It's just the way I'm doing the monorail, as in it's just the angle I'm building it at. I think it works for pitch and roll, but not yaw. So here we are, here we are doing the final tunnel on this line, as the portal on the other end of this tunnel already has a surround on it, so it doesn't, so I'm only going to be doing this side of this tunnel. This is the KSC to River Race line, and on we go to the Biker Banora line. So here's Biker Banora tunnel, which, as you can see, had those statics around the edge and now doesn't, because I removed the mod. So I am now rebuilding it with statics that you can actually download, which are the terrain integrators. These are, and I actually haven't said which mod these are from. The terrain integrators I'm using are from the Curb Inside Core mod. Here we go on to the next tunnel, which is a tunnel further down, much further down on the same line. It was about a 30-40 minute drive away. Now this tunnel, I remember, used the same statics as Biker Banora tunnel, but I had a bit of a different design, so I'm trying to sort of replicate it a bit with the terrain integrators. So yeah, so it sort of alternated between small and big pieces, like terrain integrators in this case, and you can see I'm doing the thing where I'm mirroring them. And now I go to the other side of the tunnel and do the same thing. And, yeah, that's what I was going to say. So, if you have seen any of my previous videos on the Biker Banora line, you might be wondering, I've missed like 3 tunnels here. The reason is those tunnels didn't actually use the statics that got removed, so they're not broken. So I managed to go down the line a bit further and do this tunnel instead. You can see I went a little AFK there, which caused it to pause slightly. I'm adjusting the terrain integrators on the side. And here we are at the next tunnel, which also had this problem. Now this is a bit of a smaller tunnel because the terrain that it goes through isn't as... The tunnel's quite a shallow tunnel, so I had to make the diameter of it smaller. So because of the smaller diameter, I thought it would look better with smaller terrain integrators around the edge. However, I haven't gone with any bigger terrain integrators to go with them because of the resolution at which you can change the scale of them. You can only do twice the size of that, so it would look a bit... I think it would look too much of a size difference. That being said, I did that on the last tunnel, but I think it would look disproportionate to the tunnel diameter. We are going to do the same thing on this side. Just place some small terrain integrators around the edge. You can see I was having a bit of trouble lining them up because of the grid. And you can see I'm having to move some of the terrain integrators forward slightly because they clip into the other terrain integrators. And that tunnel is done, and on to the next tunnel. Now this tunnel is one that I never finished. So this one was going to be a cut and fill tunnel, but I noticed that the cut was very deep. So I removed the terrain integrators filling it, and I adjusted the map decal so that it makes a hole in the terrain instead. And now, as I'm completely rebuilding this tunnel from scratch, I am going to use the new tunnel segments added by CX Construction, which makes building tunnels a lot easier because I'm not using hangers. The hangers are a lot shorter, so it's not as easy to build. And here we are building this tunnel. Now I say rebuilding the tunnel, I'm actually building it. I'm basically building it for the first time really, because I built the terrain integrators for the terrain over the top, but I never actually built the tunnel. So you can see I really procrastinated there. I really wanted to get the line finished, but I couldn't be bothered to do the tunnel. Nowadays when I'm building the monorail, I have a rule that I have to finish the tunnel before continuing, so things like that don't happen again. Anyway, this tunnel is nearly finished. We just have to make a hole on the other side, which proves to be difficult, as always, because we are relying on a bug with Kerbal Constructs to do this. You're not supposed to be able to make holes in the terrain with map decals, but placing it in just the right place you can, and finding that just the right place can prove to be very difficult, as you can see here. You can see I do eventually find one, but it kept disappearing when I tried adjusting it. And you can see I was having trouble with the map decal not even applying. So I had a lot of issues with this one. It is kind of painful to watch. In the end I used two map decals. I used one to open up the terrain and then another one to lift the terrain so it doesn't intersect with the train. And then I continue building the tunnel to then build the tunnel portal on the other side. And now we place a bunch of terrain integrators to fill in the gaps. Now, as another thing that the CX Construction tunnels make easier about tunnel building is they already have like a thing going around the tunnel portal. So you don't have to make one of those things or one of those surrounds around the edge of the tunnel. Speaking of surrounds around the edge of the tunnel, another tunnel I've never finished was this one. I built half of a hill, but I didn't finish the hill. I didn't finish the side of the hill, so I briefly finished that. And you can also see I never finished the surround on this side. This surround was never broken, unlike the other ones. I just never bothered to finish it, because with these tunnels on, and this is the ZPA line, this is the ZPA main line, a lot of the tunnels on this line I was very lazy and I couldn't be bothered to finish any of them. So here I am finishing the tunnel, and I am finishing it with a modern tunnel surround. Now, I couldn't actually find the terrain integrator KSP grass like the ones going over the top, so I used the terrain integrator planes. Now I can actually see it looking at the list there, so I was just being blind. like I sometimes am. Now this tunnel is a bit of an interesting one. It still has the surround, but the surround just needed adjusting because there were still gaps in it. And the reason it needed adjusting was because I lowered the tunnel. And this tunnel here, I am removing the hill over the top of it. That is ZPA tunnel. And what happened is I built the tunnel before I found out about the bug where you can punch a hole in the terrain. So I built a massive hill out of terrain integrators, and I personally think it looked really ugly, so I redid the hill I removed the terrain integrators entirely, and I'm replacing it with the modern method of punching a hole in the terrain with map decals. You may have briefly noticed that I accidentally blew up the train. That is because the group center was actually on top of the cutting I made in the terrain, so when I removed the cutting, it lifted everything up, which caused the train to explode, so I had to adjust some things. You can see there I'm making the hole in the terrain, and I'm having to place a second decal because it wasn't letting me adjust it into the right place that I wanted. And because of these changes, it does mean the tunnel needs extending. But I can't be bothered to extend it with the hangers, so I'm just going to use the CX construction tunnels and extend it with those, which will make for a unique tunnel, because this is now the first tunnel I have on the monorail which uses both the hangers and the CX construction tunnels. Now I'm going to place some terrain integrators to fill in the gaps. And that is that side of the tunnel done, or nearly done. Now we go into the tunnel and punch a hole on the other side. So here we go through the tunnel. There's the old bit of the tunnel. And I'm going to stop just before the end of the tunnel. You don't want to accidentally go through the tunnel before finishing the end, because you will cause an explosion if you crash into the terrain on the other side. I did actually once do that, where I forgot to make the hole in the terrain on the other side, and I continued building the monorail, and I was going along at full speed and I crashed into the terrain, causing a massive explosion. And as you can see, I found a very long hole which I could use to build the tunnel out of. Unconventional, but it works. I'll just fill it in with terrain integrators like I always do. There we go. Here's the exit of the tunnel. Gonna need a lot of terrain integrators to fill this massive gap in though, which goes along the length of the track, annoyingly. So you can see I'm actually using the ones that blend in with the terrain a bit here. Anyway, we're at the end of the video now, so remember, if you didn't enjoy the video, to dislike and unsubscribe, and maybe you won't watch the next video.